Good evening, everyone. I feel a little bit low because I usually sleep at this hour. So let me start. So I have a typical profile in computer science. I run a software company in Paris. So I could also do this presentation in French if you'd like, but I will stick with English for now. Recently I started teaching programming on YouTube. So if you'd like to see me speaking English or French maybe, or any other language, I'll be happy to do. To welcome you there, and I have 20 years of experience. So people say I look young. I take it as a compliment. And if you would like to learn about me, you can check my website zaisa.net or follow me on Twitter or anywhere else. And I would like to preface this talk by saying that I'm extremely friendly person, and organizers can attest that. So especially, I would like to apologize to the previous speakers. So today I would like to talk a little bit about the history of computer science. That's the reason I mentioned the 20 years of experience. And I would like to describe how history is not like a straight line, but it's more like a spiral. And it repeats itself, and I have this impression that it's getting worse and worse and worse. So let's start with this. A little bit of advice, 20 years of experience, computer science. I did artificial intelligence, but it's boring. Except if you do marketing, then it's like a trendy thing, and everyone want to do that. So this is this advice. Microservices, just don't do it. Look at Harold. Look this face. No. Absolutely no. Micro front ends. No. Just, slap it. You don't need that. Absolutely not. And then let's talk about the software engineering. Okay, so we have this concept of a module. And in software engineering, we could put things in a module, and when I say module, it's like a very abstract thing. So it could be a function, it could be a class, it could be a module. Certain programming languages have modules, and then we could arrange them nicely, and we can do this nice thing, and it's perfect. It's a perfect world. But then the practice, the life is different. It's like a mess. It's difficult to do this because the software engineering is a difficult field, and drawing the contracts, creating interfaces, and arranging all that takes time, takes experience, and you have to know a lot about this stuff. But then you have microservices, or micro frontends, or nano services, or something like that. And they say that you have those modules, those components, and you can just separate them. And you have those teams, and they can now be distributed. And what you do is one of the worst things you could do is to put network between those components, between those services. So I was traveling here from Poznań, and I couldn't catch reliable network because network is not reliable. There is a lot of problems here. So if we imagine it as a programming language, we could say that if you do it in the space of a programming language, you have these guarantees. For example, if we talk about method dispatching or method invocation, whatever you call it, if you do it in a single space, in the same space, it's fast, it's reliable, and if you're using typed languages, like the real typed languages, not TypeScript, then you have another guarantees that you can use because you're in the same space. If you are doing it over a network, you are throwing this out of the window, and you have to reinvent all those things. And it's slow. Network is extremely slow, and it's not reliable. So don't do this. And then you have this thing called distributed computing. And I bolded the word hard and underline it because it's very, very, very hard. Distributed computing is hard. So when you are doing microservices, you have this mess I talked about before, and then you are adding network, which is something which is very difficult to think about, to architect, etc. And there is even this page on Wikipedia, Fallacies of Distributed Computing. And they say that we programmers, tend to fall when we think about network, because we take it for granted. We always think about the happy scenario, about the happy case. And I draw your attention to this person, Peter Deutsch. It's an extremely interesting person. That's the person who created the list of fallacies of distributed computing. But he also created PostScript, which is the base for PDF. So I suppose everyone here is using PDF. He also worked on Smalltalk, which the work he created was then used in JVM compiler. So he is a pretty smart guy. And when he talks about fallacies and distributed computing is hard, I think we could believe him. So yeah, we talked about architecting all that, but that was the happy scenario. Everything works. But then there is this law, Murphy's law, that when shit breaks, it's like very difficult for microservices. So when if you've done some debugging, I think you could say that even for simple programs, sometimes debugging can be very difficult. So add to that network, add to that the order of your services that you don't know if they are instantiated at the same time. At the management of data, it becomes a real mess. So debugging, recovering, failures are extremely difficult to handle in this scenario, and we shouldn't do that. And then you have this overhead. So you have components and the one space, and then you have microservices, which are like a little applications. So they have config, you have to deploy them, you have to orchestrate them. You have this thing, DevOps, you have to suddenly do all those things which don't push you towards the business needs. So when the guys in suits come to your office and say, well, where is this feature? We are configuring, we are orchestrating, we have those new tools, or Terraform or something, and then they do this magic stuff, and you have to do that to deliver the feature. And lastly, to do microservices well, you have to know how to isolate them well. And if you've done some programming, you know that it's rare that things are beautiful. For example, we could have those comments somewhere in our code, here be dragons, or I wrote it, but I don't remember what it does. So when doing software in real life, there's a lot of places that are not properly designed. And this is only we're talking about regular application. So now put this in the context of microservices, and it becomes a mess. So microservices are useful, but only at certain scale. And when I say certain scale, it's someone or a company which is global, which has hundreds of millions of users, not like a small, I wanted to say Polish companies, but I won't say that, I'm sorry. So it's all about, you have all those operational problems suddenly. And we've done that. We've been there. This is not something new. So who here remembers Corba? Okay, excellent. RPC, 60s. Yeah, it's still, Kubernetes uses that. SOAP, nice. So yeah, so we've been doing that. And let me just give you a definition of Corba. So this is a standard designed to facilitate the communication of systems that are deployed on diverse platforms. Sounds familiar, right? Enables collaboration between systems on different operating systems, programming languages, and computing hardware. So it kind of sounds like we've done that, and this is 91, so almost 30 years ago. So yeah, if there's one thing you should remember from this talk, is this slide. Okay, microservices, monoliths. And this is the title of my talk. Monoliths are still the future, and always will be. Let's contemplate this little diagram here. This is the software. And the yellow is the need for microservices. It's very small, and this is global scale. If you are working in a specific, let's say, industries, this could be even small. And this is not the place where you should start doing microservices. This is the place where you should start thinking about microservices, and maybe do it somewhere here. So in most cases, I would say more than 90%, you shouldn't really bother about microservices. They don't solve anything. They just give you this additional struggle you have to resolve. So now the question for you, if you are doing a photo, holidays with your significant other, and there's this nice moment, do you take your smartphone or do you adjust white balance, aperture, take a lens, proper lens, and do the photo? Who does the smartphone? Okay, and the DSLR? Okay. So it's like, DevOps, it's like microservices where you have to adjust all those things all the time, think about them, be aware what happens, and just doing, this thing. And nowadays, iPhones or whatever you use, they have those magic AI algorithms that can choose the best photo for you.
What about medium format?
Medium format? What do you mean? I think my
60%. Yeah, just fooling around.
I didn't get that, but my slides are frozen. Sorry about that. Okay, it works. No, it doesn't. So I would like to do this case that we should all do majestic monoliths, because monoliths have this bad reputation. It's something that is big and it's not well done, but we should give it some care, and we should do monoliths in a modular way, which means that we should apply the proper software engineering principles when we are doing monoliths, which means that microservices don't resolve problems if it's bad engineering. So let me just go a little faster. So remember, start simple. They say unscalable, it's difficult to scale. Well, we've been there. Ruby, GitHub is using Rails, Shopify, one of the biggest e-commerce, is using Ruby, Python, etc. So I was thinking, okay, I know all that stuff. Maybe I should create a solution, and I've done that. It's Hunsfot. It's a programming environment for creating monoliths in JavaScript. And you say another framework? No, it's not. It's more about self. So who knows self? So you know self. Do you know self? Anyone? I mean, the self-programming language. The protoplas of JavaScript, the language that did this thing to JavaScript that because of this language, JavaScript is so beautiful. So if you don't know about this, it was created in 95 at Sun Microsystem, and they created this beautiful project. It was a programming environment 25 years ago and had everything. It was a framework. They didn't call it a framework at that time because, who cares? They had integrated editor and they had infrastructure. You could just drag and drop, not write your code, drag and drop. And it worked. It was deployed. They didn't use that word, but so yeah, we are doing those circles, and it's worse and worse. 25 years ago at Sun, they had this amazing software. So nowadays, if you are interested in that, I recommend this movie, this YouTube video, Self, the movie, extremely interesting. And I'm trying to do the same in JavaScript, adapted to the modern era. So if you're interested, talk to me and let me know your thoughts. And remember, don't do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.